Hello, witches, warlocks, mortals, one and all, and welcome to the very first episode of CAOS Commentary. This is the show where we will be discussing and reviewing and digging into episodes of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the new Netflix series by the creators of Riverdale. The one thing I want to ask from you is to please leave the comment section spoiler-free. We are just going to be talking about the first two episodes here. So anything regarding future episodes, please leave it out of the comments. I have not seen other episodes, and I want to keep these raw and real for you guys. So please keep that in mind as you're going to comment. The very first episode is called Chapter 1, October Country. This episode is introducing us to everything from Sabrina and outward. She is a half witch, half mortal, which means she is caught between two worlds, and we get to see both of them. This episode really introduces us to the world of Sabrina. It introduces us to what she is dealing with. It introduces us to our central conflict of these main two episodes, which surrounds around Sabrina's dark baptism on her upcoming 16th birthday, which is very conveniently on Halloween. And on her 16th birthday, she will have to choose which path she will walk. The path of the light or the path of night. Now, path of light means that she says nope, swears off magic, and decides to live a normal mortal life. If she plans to walk the path of night, on the other hand, she writes her name in the Book of the Beast in order to serve the Dark Lord and fully embrace her witchhood, which means she will then go to the Academy of Unseen Arts, and means she will have to say goodbye to her friends, her boyfriend, and the life she knows at Baxter High. Now, what separates this from Riverdale is that right off the bat, this is more of a horror story. While Riverdale has always had elements of fear and scare and all that kind of stuff, this goes full on out for you on the creepitude. It's not a mystery, it's not a thriller like Riverdale is. This is full on horror. But, of course, it also has its balancing of some humor, some camp, and all that good stuff that we also enjoy. Now, the Netflix budget came through for this show. It really did. The visuals are amazing. That's one thing that both shows have in common, and they really do great, is visuals. And Sabrina's stand out so well. The title sequence, one of the very first things we've seen, is really beautiful and immersive and vivid, and it really grabs your attention. And it is 100% in the style that the original comics were of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, so that's an interesting little tidbit they got there. One thing I also want to talk about briefly and get out of the way before I start gushing about it for too long, I really enjoy the aesthetic of this series. It is very, very much a vintage 60s aesthetic. The music is all pretty much from the 60s from what I've heard so far of it. The outfits are all very much in that, the set design. It gives off a very specific vibe, and I think works really well for this. And I think they modeled that off because in the original Sabrina comics, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, it was set in the 60s. So this is set in current day, which does lead for possibilities of a connection with Riverdale in the future if they decide to go that route. But it definitely pays homage to the comics. In the first episode, we start out with Sabrina. She's giving a narration about her life. She familiarizes us with it, and we see her watching a horror movie with her friends Roz and Susie, and also her boyfriend Harvey. And it is a classic black and white horror film, and while everyone else is scared and jumping in the theater, Sabrina is sitting there, getting her life, eating her popcorn, and I need that gift so I can use it. One of the things I noticed first off the bat is just how smart Sabrina is, just how kind of charming she is as well, and that really draws you into her character and centers you onto her plot very, very quickly. Now, as her and her friends are leaving the movie, they run into Sabrina's favorite teacher, Ms. Wardwell. She's a spinster type, and Sabrina, out of pity, invites her to come with them to the bookshop. Now, Ms. Wardwell disagrees, and what we get next is very interesting and changes things very quickly. Ms. Wardwell is driving back to her home when she sees a girl in the middle of the road. Now, being a good Samaritan and a teacher, which probably instilled those values in her, she pulls over, tries to figure out what's happening with the girl, and decides to bring her home with her. The girl having in the woods is one of the first scares that we get in this episode, and the show quickly cements itself in the horror genre when we cut back to Ms. Wardwell and this girl getting to know each other a bit, and she flies off the handle, this girl, and she stabbed Ms. Wardwell in the neck with scissors. That was the very first WTF moment of this show in the very first episode, and it comes at you quick. They don't waste any time telling you exactly what all of this is about. As a result of Ms. Wardwell's killing, it seems as if the girl from the woods has taken over her body. Now this girl, or this woman, seems to really have it out for Sabrina, and what we learn over the 2 episodes is that she's clearly serving the devil. She's clearly serving the beast. I never know what to call him just because there's so many different names. And also, we have our own, fears and histories and beliefs about, the devil and everything, so it's a little difficult to talk about, I think, even if it is in a fictional world. This girl is really pissed about Sabrina's death, though. I don't know if they're just mad because he married a mortal and people still have resentments because of that, or if it's something deeper. I'm sure it is something deeper. And we'll get into that about her dad a little bit later. One of the other very interesting things we learned from the Wardwell scene is that there was apparently a witch trial here, and that 13 witches, accused witches, were killed in the forest in Greenwood. Now, a lot of things in the show seem to revolve around the forest in a way. It seems that a lot of the power for the witches, a lot of the mysterious things happening are coming from the woods. Now, I kind of thought about, is the woods a hellmouth? Kind of relating to Buffy in a way. And as we know, the devil is a character here. So I don't think it's too far-fetched. The wood has some kind of power, and I'm sure it also has a very dark history, which adds to that power. Something I found interesting that they decided to do is they don't really give us a build-up to these kind of things. There's a build-up in these 2 episodes, but Sabrina's pretty settled into her life. Harvey and Sabrina are already in a relationship. There isn't a build-up to it at all. They're just already together. He gives her a necklace and tells her that he loves her, and that's pretty much the one big change that happens, is that he tells her that he loves her. But otherwise, they were already in a committed relationship that we didn't see the build-up to. There's also not a longer build-up to this dark baptism. As you guys know, all of this goes down in episode 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But we don't see Sabrina just getting her powers, we don't see her adjusting to them. She seems to have a pretty solid grip on them for the most part. She's not a complete newbie, but she's also not a very experienced witch either. She's not a master of her powers. Essentially, she's a novice right now. One thing about being just thrown into this world and not seeing the build-up is that we don't kind of see how Harvey and Sabrina fall in love, which might give us more of an attachment. And one of the downsides is this, or maybe it's supposed to be the point, is that Harvey is kind of bland. He's definitely got a bit of a charm to him, but he seemed very normal. There's nothing super exciting about Harvey. He's a good, decent, supportive guy, and that's all good things. But it's not the kind of thing on a television romance specifically that makes you like, oh, that they belong together. At least that's not what we've seen so far. The good things is that he's very supportive. He seems to obviously care for Sabrina, and he's willing to listen. He is also a little bit of a cardboard cutout. Now, my thoughts on this is that it kind of shows that desire for a normal mortal life. She doesn't need anything, crazy, interesting, or flashy. She doesn't need a bad guy. She doesn't need a guy that needs to be worked on. She just wants a normal kind of simple relationship. Now, how that comes into play later, we'll have to see, and if their relationship survives will be another interesting point. After we're introduced to Harvey and her friends, we're introduced to the people in Sabrina's home life, her witch life, and those people are her aunts Hilda and Zelda, and also her cousin Ambrose. Now, Ambrose is under house arrest. So far, he's been on house arrest for 75 years, and at this point, we don't know exactly why. I'm sure it'll be a plot point in the future, and I'm excited to get into Ambrose, because so far in these 2 episodes, he's been a pretty strong standout. There's so many interesting characters going on in this show, but I do tend to find the people in her witch life a bit more interesting than in her mortal life. Her aunts are very different. Hilda seems a lot more even-tempered, kind, doting, warm. which kind of works and I think plays off well her Aunt Zelda, because on the other hand, Zelda is very cold in her own way. She's cunning, she has her principles and her morals, and she has her plan, and she is not going to deviate from it for no one, no how, for nothing. That leads to a very interesting relationship between Hilda and Zelda and how they play off each other. Zelda seems to be a control freak about pretty much everything that's going on, and Hilda seems to be a bit of a kept woman. Could be because she's afraid of Zelda or because Zelda is the older sister, but one thing is for sure, that their relationship is tumultuous. Sabrina has a very strong personality. She doesn't kind of want to be bowled over. Now, she's talking about the dark baptism with her aunts, and one of the things she's talking about is the name she wants to take, and this is when we start to get into a little bit about her parents. And she decides for her dark baptism, she's going to take the name Edwina Diana. One thing I did notice is that all of them have accents besides Sabrina, which I guess is because they're so old. While Sabrina is still talking with her aunts, we find out about her familiar, which has another key player in Sabrina's life. Now, when Zelda brings up familiar, she mentioned that they are goblins who take on the form of an animal to better serve their witch or warlock. And they want Sabrina to pick a familiar out of a book. Sabrina, who is a woman of her own ideas, has a different way she wants to go about this. She decides to go into the wood and she decides to call out and ask if someone wants to serve her. She doesn't want to just, you know, pick someone and be like, you're doing it, you don't have a choice in the matter. She wants them to have a choice, and she wants it to be a mutual relationship, which I thought was really cool and tells a lot about Sabrina. But in doing so, she makes the Weird Sisters pop up. Now, these are three ladies that are already going to the Academy of Unseen Arts, which is the school Sabrina will be going to when she does her dark baptism. And they decide to put a hex on her because they don't like her very much. And one of the things that they imply when they're talking about this is that her father and mother's death may not have been as accidental as everyone has told her. Now, I don't think her parents died in just some random tragic accident. There's definitely something more evil afoot going on here, or they're actually secretly alive. Either way, we're going to have to see in the future how that pans out, but I think that's one of the big questions, is what really happened to Sabrina's parents, because it can't be that obvious, especially if they're bringing it up this many times. They didn't bring it up just once as a sort of, oh, hey, my parents are dead thing. No, they're bringing it up multiple times, so that means there's something more going on here. One of the things that I really liked, though, when the Weird Sisters popped up, is that Sabrina did not see herself as a victim. Sabrina stood her ground against them, which shows just how assured of herself she really is, even though she is questioning whether she wants to join the Church of the Night and follow the path of her aunts and her family before her, even though people are telling her that's what her parents wanted for her. One of the main things we learn over these first two episodes is that Sabrina very much wants to keep both sides of her life. She's always been raised with both of them, so she wants to keep them. She's having a very hard time letting go of the world of her friends, of Baxter High. And part of that reason is because of her friend Susie. Susie doesn't seem to like being defined, and other people in this high school seem to have a problem with it, namely the macho jock football players who have been bullying her and tormenting her. And one thing Sabrina wants to do before she leaves is start a club for women protecting women to try and fight against this. Poor Susie is getting bullied by these people, and the principal, who is also a sleaze, who probably grew up like those same teenager football players did, doesn't see a problem with what's happening, and that if Susie thinks it's a problem, she can go to another school. He's a scumbag. Plain and simple. Now, one of the things about this series that's so satisfying is that while horrific things are happening to certain people, it feels fitting. It feels like vengeance. It's like cathartic in a way, because these are the people you want to see get this kind of comeuppance. At least when Sabrina's doing the magic. When other people are, it's not always so good, which one would expect when you're serving the devil. It is after this that Ms. Wardwell makes her appearance again, but she is no longer that spinster. No, her hair is down now and she is sexy. She is here and she is ready to fulfill her job, which seems to be to get Sabrina to follow through with her dark baptism and kind of be a bit of a counselor. Now, Sabrina and the new Ms. Wardwell have a little meeting talking about what's happening, and she suggests that there are other methods to get what she wants. If Principal Hawthorne was to take a day off, well, maybe she'd be able to get her club to protect Susie. And she mentions that Principal Hawthorne is scared of spiders. One of the things that I didn't expect to happen was Sabrina tried to tell Harvey what was going on. She was, at first, decided to tell him that she was just going to a boarding school and she wouldn't be able to stay with him, but then he starts asking questions like, oh, what school is it? I'll visit you on the weekends, all that kind of stuff. And that prompts Sabrina to have a moment of doubt, and she brings him to the forest and she decides to confess that she is a witch to him. This does not go over so well. Harvey really doesn't take it that well, which kind of makes sense because he's not exactly the kind of guy that seems like he'd be down with all of that. So he has a freak out and Sabrina makes him forget, wipes it from his memory. Now all this I feel like really showed off Sabrina's range and how deeply she feels about Harvey, because why would she go to all this lengths if she didn't care? After that, Sabrina goes home and her and Ambrose decide they're going to cast a spell later. But first, she has a little meeting with Hilda and Zelda, telling them that she got hexed by the Weird Sisters, and they pretty much tell her that everyone's just jealous because her dad was a high priest. Which doesn't exactly seem true and adds more onto the whole something doesn't seem right here thing. So Sabrina goes to take a bath, and in this she seems to have a vision. And this vision is of her parents in the woods. They seem to be running away, going away, doing something like that. And in the dream there are 2 babies. Now this made me think, does Sabrina have a twin? Especially because if you ever watched the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch series in the 90s, in one of the seasons, Sabrina has to find out the Spellman family secret. And the Spellman family secret is that every Spellman has a twin. So my thought was, do they have a twin? And also, because we saw that one of the babies had hooves, my thought was that it was some sort of religious kind of allegory, because children of sin are supposed to have, like, hooves for feet and, you know, have physical signs of the devil in them. So I thought that was interesting. And if she has a twin, where are they? Now we get Ambrose and Sabrina getting ready to cast their spell on Principal Hawthorne, and they bring out a bunch of spiders, which are apparently Hilda's familiar. And I find it kind of interesting hearing about everyone's familiar, because I feel like it says a bit about that. Now this whole sequence where they cast the spell and the spiders come up, start crawling on the principal all over him and like smother him, was horrific to watch. But it also felt like sweet, sweet comeuppance, because you truly felt like he deserved it because he was being a big old jerk. And Sabrina was so happy with herself, you couldn't even be mad. Now after casting her spell, Sabrina goes back to her room, who we find there is a goblin who answered her call and wants to be her familiar, and it is Salem, who has named himself, and him and Sabrina have entered into a partnership where they are protecting each other. So Sabrina once again brings up her concerns about her dark baptism to her aunts in the morning, and they ask if Harvey has defiled her because she's supposed to be pure for the Dark Lord. And one of the little things I find funny about this world is that they say, oh, praise Satan, when they're like thankful about something, or like, oh, thank God. Instead of oh, thank God, they say, oh, praise Satan, which is just ridiculous. Now, because Sabrina is still doubting her choice, Ambrose recommends that she finds a Malum Malice, which is supposed to give her a glimpse of the future. She decides to go to the, farm pumpkin patch type thing with Harvey to try and find this Malum Malice. Now, while she's trying to go through, she is trying to be stopped by Ms. Wardwell, who is hunting her down in the maze, but luckily Salem comes and saves her, and she's able to get the Malum Malice. She's able to take a bite of it, but what she sees is not what she expects. It is a horrifying vision of a bunch of dead witches, it seems like, and then the beast himself coming out of a tree in the woods. Now, what this all means is uncertain. What are the Dark Lord's plans, and what does it have to do with Sabrina? Because what we learned throughout this whole thing is that it seems like the devil very, very, very much wants Sabrina. And why does he want her? My thoughts on this is that if she doesn't follow him, she's the only one that can stop him. Sabrina is crucial to whatever the beast has planned or in store for the human world. So after eating the malice, Sabrina seems to have come to some sort of decision about what she wants to do regarding all of this. So she goes home and she seems like she's ready to tell her aunts, but we have a surprise visitor there, and that is Father Blackwood, who is a high priest in the Church of Night, and he is here to answer any questions for Sabrina and dissuade her. And that is the cliffhanger of episode 1 that makes you want to hit that remote and then go straight on to episode 2 like we are right now. So this is chapter 2, the Dark Baptism. We pick up right where we left off last time with Father Blackwood and Sabrina, and he tells her to ask whatever questions he likes. Now, his nails are pretty creepy. Now some thoughts on Father Blackwood. First impression, he is very suave, but also kind of terrifying, and obviously a man of high respect and power. Her aunts seem very, subservient to him. That's one of the interesting things about the Church of Night, is that while they're saying that they're giving these women this power, they're giving them freedom, they're giving them all these things, but it seems to be structured that they're under the influence or under the power of men in a way. Because while they do have their own freedom at other times, ultimately if they're called to do something, they're most likely going to do it no matter what. There's no mention of any, priestesses or any women that are in roles of power. It seems that the devil himself is a man, and all the high people up in the church are, all the priests that we've heard of so far have been men. Sabrina's father was one, and then also now we have Father Blackwood, who was her father's mentor. So is this all really about girl power, feminism, giving these women power and control, or is it just them having another cage and being subservient to someone else? Father Blackwood answers all her questions, tells her, we're not evil, you still have freedom, you can choose whatever you want. If you're not happy with this after you're at the academy, you can just leave. That's the path. It's not so bad at all. You'll be fine. And Sabrina takes this and she's like, okay, you know what? I guess we're going with this. And through this, we also get another tidbit about her parents, that their union was blessed by Satan himself, which made it okay for him to marry a mortal, but no one else is allowed to ever, and it was a very special one-time exception. Pretty much, which is why Sabrina can't still be with Harvey. So Sabrina is basically agreeing to go into the Church of Night at this point. Now Ambrose decides to bring up something that I forgot to mention happened last episode, which is that they had another body come to the morgue, and Ambrose spotted a witch's mark on him. Now Ambrose seems to think that it was a witch hunter, and everyone else so far is telling him, nope, it's not a witch hunter. This poor guy just didn't have a coven, it was just an accident. Ambrose is not so sure, and he seems on the investigation of this, and we see this throughout the rest of the episode. And we don't really get an answer on it in this. We get a little scene of Sabrina talking with her Aunt Hilda, and she asks if Hilda ever had any regrets about joining the church. And Hilda tells her that there are some nights she wished she could just burn the forest down, which doesn't bode well for her. So it seems that there are some regrets. But they don't want Sabrina to know any about this. They want her to join, especially Zelda, who is spying on this interaction, and oh boy is she pissed. So much so that the next time we see Hilda, Zelda just walks up, smacks her in the face with the hammer, kills her, and buries her. Complicated familial relationships. But oh boy is it a joy to watch. That was like a what moment? But luckily, we find out what happens a little bit later. Harvey shows up in the morning and is asking if he could take Sabrina out the next day for her birthday or something. And they're all just like, yep, we'll play it by ear. We got plenty of time. And the clock is ticking down and down and down. We see another scene of the football players harassing Susie. And Sabrina had previously at the end of last episode gotten approval for her Wicca club. That is the abbreviation for it, which is very funny and on the nose. Sabrina is PO'd at what happens to Susie, and she goes and talks to Ms. Wardwell, and she's basically like, get revenge again. And Sabrina is on board. Sabrina is like, I ain't doing this alone, let's go. So she goes to the woods and she calls for the Weird Sisters, and she gives them a proposition to help her give some mortal boys some comeuppance and play with them a little bit. And the Weird Sisters are all on board, especially after Sabrina promises that she won't go to the Academy of Unseen Arts, but she crosses her fingers. They agree, and I was very excited about the sisterhood that started forming here. It was a very fun relationship to watch, and I wish we, and I hope we get to see more of it. We get a scene of the football players acting like complete jackasses by a car, drinking, and just being terrible all-around people, which makes it even sweeter when Sabrina rolls up with the Weird Sisters. They're walking in formation, and you're just like, ooh, yes. And they show up, and they say that they want to invite these boys to a party. And they don't hesitate for 5 seconds. They go right on. So the Weird Sisters and Sabrina bring them through the woods, and they're asking, oh, why haven't we seen any of you girls before? Do you go to Riverdale? Which is, you know, the first little tease, because they're going to be doing this now and making us wanting for a crossover, which maybe we'll get, maybe we won't. We'll have to see in the future. These guys go with them, and they bring them to what is called the Devil's Doorway, which is actually a mine. And one of the things about Greendale is that it seems to have a very big mining community. It seems to be one of their main forms of income for people living there. They take them down to the mines, and it, of course, is turning into a sex party. So all the girls take off their clothes, and they all have sexy matching black lingerie, because that's just how you do when you're having this kind of party, I suppose. And it looks like they're all making out with the guys, but of course it is a magic trick, and they are really making out with each other. And Sabrina snaps the Polaroids for proof and to tell them to back the F off of Susie, or everyone's gonna know about this. But Prudence and the Weird Sisters are not going to stop there. Oh, not at all. They want to have a little bit more fun with these boys. So they turn out all those lights and start coming at them with like melted zombie faces. Another great little scary tidbit there, and these boys go running for their lives. Oh, and just as a little gumdrop on top, they have locked their manhood and tied it to some birds in a cage, and they will not be able to get it up until Sabrina releases the bird and says they can. Then we get a little scene between Sabrina and Prudence kind of talking about things, and Prudence says like, yeah, we know you lied, but we don't care. We had too much fun doing this. We wanted to do it anyway. We didn't need an excuse. So in their conversation, Sabrina mentions that she wants both freedom and power, and Prudence says that she'll never have both because, well, she'll have all the power. She's never going to have freedom under the beast, under Satan himself, because he's a man after all, isn't he, as she says. We see poor Aunt Hilda rise out of the grave and stumble back home, and Zelda tells her, don't pull any crap again or it's going to happen again, and one day you're not going to rise up. And apparently, as the older sister, she has some right to murder her younger siblings, which is kind of terrifying, and makes me wonder if she had a hand in her brother, who is Sabrina's dad's, death. She could easily be a villain, and she'd be so good at it. But I'm not sure they'll go that route, only because she's just a really interesting character, and to have her be, you know, not bad like that makes it all the more interesting, even though she is. They've all got evil sides, clearly. Now, we see Sabrina spying on this scene, and Zelda says that Sabrina has no choice in the matter, that she's going to follow through this baptism no matter what. And Sabrina is like, this is just more signs that Sabrina should not be doing this, essentially. Now, one of the things I kind of noted here was that Hilda seems to truly, genuinely love Sabrina just full-heartedly, and there's no kind of ulterior motives there. Now, Zelda does seem to love her too in her own way, but she's more cold and calculating about things, and she wants things her way. It's her way or the highway, and she has an agenda, and she needs Sabrina to fulfill it, or else her love is kind of revoked in a way. Finally, it is Sabrina's birthday. She's all ready to go to school, and Zelda says, nope, you're staying home. And Sabrina is PO'd. And she has a really nice scene with Ambrose where he tells her that she can't keep going on with them. Her life is going to change after this baptism. She's not going to grow old quickly. Everything's going to be very slow for her. And all the things in the mortal world are not going to seem to matter at all anymore. And it's just going to fade. So because of this, Sabrina decides she's going to have one last night with her friends. A big last hurrah to say goodbye to them. So she calls up Harvey, and he comes to pick her up to go to Roz's Halloween party that she's been wanting to have and wanting Sabrina to come to, so they can all celebrate one last time. Now, Sabrina is wearing her mother's wedding dress that she is going to wear for the baptism, which is a beautiful, beautiful, very like 60s style dress, which of course, with all this aesthetic. And Harvey is wearing a mine hat. And Ambrose, we love Ambrose, says, "Oh, you dressed as your future." Harvey is so confused. Poor Harvey is just very confused by everything, but he's trying, so I give him points for that. So he takes her to the party where they dance the night away, they celebrate her birthday, and they all have a really good time together. And Sabrina asks Harvey to not hate her. She says, "Well, please promise you'll always love me and you won't hate me." And Harvey is just like, "I could never hate you." One thing that Susie does mention during this party is that she lives on a farm, and I immediately thought, she lives on the farm? Like the farm that's in Riverdale? Is she part of a cult? Because answers. I'm sure it's probably not, and she just lives on a farm, and I'm looking too deep into things. The music choices are very like on the nose, which you kind of love it or you hate it. They're dancing to the Monster Mash and 16 Candles. Can't get more obvious than that, but I don't think I'd have it any other way. It's finally time for the eclipse, and Sabrina has to run off like Cinderella to her dark baptism. She just makes it into the woods, and we get some truly amazing visuals here. She walks through an arch of tree branches to go meet the rest of the witches, and it seems every witch in Greendale is here to watch her dark baptism. This was a visual feast, this entire scene. It was great. We get into her baptism, and eventually she gives all her pledges. She says, I'll pledge myself to the Dark Lord, all this stuff. But then it comes time to actually sign her name in the book. She gets her hand cut open so she can sign her name in her blood, which will be a lasting covenant. And she can't do it because they pull an old switcheroo and are like, "You will serve the Dark Lord, you will always answer his call, you will be in servience to him, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, the F, my dude, you did not say this. So she's hesitating signing, and she doesn't do it. And what she does is she decides to run. This was an intense moment. She is crawling through the ground as the branches reach out and grab her, and you just shiver watching that. But she does make it away, and she makes it back to her house where Ambrose comes out. But all the witches are not far behind, and they are ready to force her to sign this book come hell or high water. We get this big scene, and it is so wonderful and amazing and triumphant to see Sabrina stand there and say, "This is my name, and I'm not signing it away for anyone. I want to walk a different path, and I will do it no matter what." And it's just real badassery, and you're like, yes, this is why I like you, Sabrina. I didn't expect all this to happen in one fell swoop, but here's where we are. Ambrose claims that there is a protection spell on this house, and if anyone but a spellman crosses it, they will burst into flames. So they all disband for the moment, but they plan to get her to sign no matter what. Following the outcome of this, we don't even see the next day. We skip to Monday morning, and Zelda is still pissed. She hasn't talked to Sabrina all weekend. Hilda's kind of just still loving her and ignoring what happened, but Zelda is pissed that they were embarrassed in front of the entire coven and that Sabrina rejected everything. But she still has her powers. She's still in the middle. She's still immortal and she's still a witch, and what's gonna happen is remaining to be seen. The devil literally comes out, and Ms. Wardwell kisses his feet, and he's like, "Alright, you failed that, but you better get her this time." Sabrina goes back to school the next day, and she's called into the principal's office after the meeting of her Little Women's Wicca club. She's called to the principal's office, she heads there, and oh, the principal does not last for long because Satan channels his way right through there and says that all mortal flesh will burn. Now, one of my theories is that Satan is trying to come to Earth and he needs her power to help do that, and maybe she's the one to stop him and let witches have their own power and be free. So it'll be exciting to see how this all plays out, but the devil has it out for you, Sabrina. Watch out. Now, overall, I did enjoy these first two episodes. I think they really kind of set things up. The first two episodes did kind of feel like a movie in a way, but we didn't get that full conclusion because we got a lot more of the season to go. Please tell me down below what you guys thought about this episode. What are some of your theories? What did you think so far of the show? What do you think of the characters? Thank you guys for watching this episode of CAOS Commentary. I'll see you next week, and peace.